Okay, perfect. All right, well, hello everybody. We are the Rogues, and I am Raya Taggarty.
I'm Leslie Rodriguez.
I'm Jonathan Black.
And we are the Rogues. So we'll go ahead and start. Okay, so our first topic was about the key concepts that we've learned in the class and kind of how our view of the design profession has changed since completing the project. So how did you guys feel about it with this course?
So for me, one concept that I found that mostly impacted me was the logo ideation process.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was something, it's really interesting how we think something so simple that just like creating the design of a logo and we just kind of do sketches and everything has more of a strategic process. I thought that
Right,
was kind of interesting, like, the preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. So
right.
that was really interesting how each step had its own like thing, how like the first one, like the brainstorming, it's kind of like, they included stuff like watching a movie, listening to a song, it counts as like a form of research sometimes for a brand. And
Right.
then incubation, like you kind of think about, because I've always thought about that, you get really stressed out. You know how you look at just like the page and you're like, I need to come out with the concept.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, like you would sit there and you just look at it and I would very like I would come in blank and I wouldn't think about it. So I thought it was interesting that they added that to the ideation process
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of like take a step back, and then it kind of comes in hand in hand with like the illumination process where you have that moment of realization, because I've like been, for example, sometimes like on a drive and all of a sudden I think of it. Like
Right.
is kind of funny. And then the last one is like the verification to make sure that the idea is like it applies to the brand and it will be
Mhm.
like successful, or it will be like a good brand. So I feel like that's one thing that really impacted me. Like I didn't really think about something can have like the to come up with the logo,
Mhm.
like the process of the ideation to have like a strategic process. To me, that was kind of like important because something that we've already done, it's it has like more of a strategic project like process, like in our bachelor's, for example. Like I feel like we're taught so much to, like for the graphic design one in Full Sail, we were taught to have a more like, what's the word, to just look at the brand like it's more like its idea, like how it looks, but not
Mhm.
really like the strategic part of it of whether
Like
it
how it
applies.
applies.
Yeah. So I
Hmm.
thought that was interesting in this class. Like I feel like it really changed my perspective on the way, like the process of creating a logo and like the, like the whole ideation process of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. My biggest takeaway from this was how many aspects go into the actual creation process. And while I knew that there was a lot of research and background work that had to be done before brands, came out with their logo, I truly didn't realize it until I was creating mine, just as something as simple as, am I using like rounded corners? Am I using straight edge? Like, those types of things all came into play as you're reflecting on your brand and like, what's the best way to portray my brand in the correct light? So I agree with you 100%. Like that was a really huge takeaway from me. Um, and I also just realized the importance of truly understanding your brand and having, the design research done beforehand so that you can apply those concepts and it's not like a backtracking um, process. So, like for me, for example, because we're so familiar with the brand that we've been working with, it was so easy to then make the design decisions and represent the brand in the logo. Um, but had I not have had that, it would have been incredibly hard and I could see it, taking even longer because I wouldn't know how to, you know, um, create it that reflects it. Does that make sense? Um,
Yes.
Yeah, like also like how the class, like we like everything had to have like a research, for example. Like we had to have a lot of research for each of like the like the logo concepts that we had. So I thought that was really interesting. Like I've never done it like that, where it's like you need to have so much research behind
Mhm.
it and have everything, like how you said, you have to like use the concept from the beginning that we've been using for the thesis to really like continue to like have kind of like in a way like a straight line, in the sense of continue to use the same thing to make sure it's like, successful and still applies to the meaning itself that we did in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Jonathan, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
oh no, no, you're good. Um, yeah, so like one thing I thought that was kind of really interesting when we're working on this, I had only previously one other time did a lot of sketching and created a logo from like just from the initial sketching phases all the way to like creating an illustrator. It's always kind of funny because you think you have a general idea in your head what you want the logo to look like and be like. And then when you finally start drawing, you get these ideas and you're like, oh, well, maybe that won't translate over the greatest.
Right.
And that was just kind of super like interesting to see how like the design process went. Um, Another aspect too, I don't know if you guys also had this too, like kind of I wouldn't say it was an issue, but just something you encountered. When you guys were trying to design your logo, did you like? I also conducted research. Did you guys try to find like something that would like perfectly? Um, oh my god, oh my god, I'm lagging.
Like
Like just
perfectly like align with like the logo and stuff like that, like the meaning
yeah,
of it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Just wanted to find something that would perfectly align with it. Because when I was like designing, for instance, doing like the concert, I had to think like, okay, what can work with this? What won't work with this?
Mhm.
Yeah, and
A lot
it's
of trial
funny
and
how you
error.
always have to find also something unique. Like it can't be something like another brand too. So it's like you have
Yes,
to have
yes.
differentiation. Like I did come into that. Like it was very difficult. Like one of the stuff that I had in the original sketches was like a four-leaf clover. And I was like, what does this have to do with the therapy brand? But then I found that it was like a four-leaf clover. It's like a clover
Mhm.
like youth development or something like that. But I was like, that's not gonna like teens are
Yeah,
not gonna know that. They're not gonna know like a logo clover thing, like it's
Yes.
psychology. So it's like very difficult to come up with like a idea, or like when you come up with an idea, like this will look nice, but it doesn't apply to the brand like its meaning.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I I struggled with that as well. Like you said, the differentiation. Mine is the toy company, and I just looked up, it's a wooden toy company. And I had just done some research about other competitors, and the one logo that I had in mind, I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so cute. Like, so not just cute, but it's gonna be such a great concept. I was gonna do my brand is Treetop Toys, so I was gonna do treetop and then toy spelled out in what the wooden blocks. One of the first designs I saw, or one of the first logos I pulled up, was exactly that. And it just makes you think, just because it's your best first idea doesn't mean it's your best.
yeah,
And that was, while I knew that in my head, it didn't seem like it applied to me until you were actually going through this process. And I think that is just really important. Like, again, going back to the research, like not just design, like researching the concepts and why the application of it, but researching what are other brands and what are and like Leslie, you like made a really good point about how are teens going to be able to recognize the relationship between the logo and the service. And that's another huge factor. Like, is your target audience going to understand it? Are they going to be able to relate to it,
Yeah, that's like such a difficult part to connect also the messaging as well as with the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because like I feel like in my bachelor's I was taught so much to do something that applies, but it's kind of in a way, how do I explain this? Like it was very based on just like the idea of the brand or the look of it. It
Right.
wasn't based on the meaning and the messaging. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult how like how you said that you had this idea, you're like, this is gonna look great, this is gonna look
mhm,
fantastic. And then it's like you do it and then it's like it's someone else has it, or it doesn't apply to the actual, like how we had the need of the brand and stuff like that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, nothing applies. So it was very
Yeah.
difficult to remind yourself to like start with the research process and then kind of formulate the sketches as well. Like
Mhm.
to me that's something very like it's going to help us obviously in the future as like designers. It's going to help us to really to have a different idea, like different thought process and have a strategic way to come up with these logo ideas. But it's something very like it's, you know, it's our first time doing it like that, I feel like, and it's very it's a good thing, but also kind of scary and difficult to do the first time.
Exactly. Another thing that I noticed as you were, or I was thinking about as you were saying that, um, was about like in the future, how it's going to apply. And it's just crazy, you know, now going through this process, like I'm going into it thinking like, oh my gosh, well, you know, I'm gonna go into the next project and I'm gonna have really even more unique ideas, or, you know, it's gonna be a lot stronger. But as you develop them, like Jonathan was saying, you really realize like, okay, maybe that's not the best decision, or, you know, and it's just a process. And I think the annotating that we've been looking at in our like in the modules has been helpful, because how I maybe would have annotated something may have been based more on like appearance versus like formatting, or, you know, colors, things like that. So that was also very helpful for me.
Yeah,
Oh,
like there's so many things. I'm so sorry. I want to let Jonathan talk. I
oh
know
no,
he's
no, no.
jumping
Go ahead.
in.
Go ahead. You're all good. Go ahead.
Something like the logo of the brand is something that's even like important, and we didn't think about that before. Like we would choose colors that we felt like reflected the
Yes.
brand's like feel, and we didn't think about the strategic like thought that came into the like the brand itself, like
Mhm.
connecting with it. So I think that's definitely something that's also going to help us like in the future to have a, it's just really important that I feel like our master's is teaching us to have a unique way of and a strategic way to kind of come up with the same process that other designers are doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, with the initial sketching stages, like I would also say, like it helped me a lot. Like once I began sketching, like all the ideas just started coming in. Like I got more and more as I kept sketching. But this also helped me more. I could see it on paper and be like, okay, maybe this color would work better here. And like just like doing that from sketching just helped out like a ton.
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think part of the revisions assignment, it's like a lot in the example that it had, they were adding like different like the codes for the colors or like the CMYK colors and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I thought that was interesting too. I tried to add like a try to think of different ideas as well, and then look as well as like what color can portray a certain feeling to the target audience and stuff like that, because it's like the it has to reflect the brand's need as well, and the theme and everything. So it's something that I feel like definitely helps us in the future, and it gives us like a different perspective of like being a designer. Like for example, my dad had asked me, he's like, you know, what's the difference between your master's and like your bachelor's? You're still designing. And I'm like, it's the way we think of this. It's like a strategic way to formulate everything that we do. Before it was just making it look pretty. Now it's like there's some strategy to it.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I completely agree. I think you led to our next point too. One of your points you were making reminded me of a challenge that I was facing, in terms of making sure things don't just look pretty, that they're actually representing it, um, like specifically the brand. And something that I did to kind of combat my initial instincts in creating for myself versus for the audience, after I had produced some of the designs, I sent it to some different people and kind of compared their reactions towards them. And I noticed, I'd probably say about 80% of the time, the strongest like designs that they chose were ones I would not have chosen. So it really put it into perspective to me that just because I like it does not mean it's you know, it's the best for the brand. So that was definitely a learning curve for me. And I think it just taught me that you really, again, you truly have to understand what and who you're representing and who's going to be seeing it.
Yeah, I thought it was that's definitely something that I didn't think about like I always have my sister, for example, that I send like the stuff that I'm doing for school because she's in the bachelor's program right now. But I send her stuff and I'm like, oh, look at this logo that I'm doing right now, or like for my thesis and stuff. And the ones that I like, that's the same thing. And she just be like, no, this one's better. Like, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. And I didn't think about it. So it's like you said, it's very important to separate yourself from the brand, that it's not
Mhm.
like it's not about us, it's not about what we like or about what we want. It's about what really applies to the brand. And I feel like it kind of separates us from the brand to think about that, like that importance of like the messaging of
Mhm.
like reflecting it in the logo. I feel like it helps us maybe separate ourselves possibly.
Mhm.
For me, what I found kind of difficult in this class was or like the challenge that I kind of faced was like the sketch and design like
Mhm.
rationale. Like it requires like the research behind it. Because it's
Right.
like something that I said earlier, that it's just like we're taught so much, like, or for example, like I was taught in the bachelor's program to reflect like the feel, and it wasn't so much like research based, it was just kind of connecting with like what the brand is about, not so much of like its meaning. And like for example, like I said, like the colors, even everything plays into the meaning of the brand and connecting with a target audience and relating that message to the target audience with the logo.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, no, I was in the same boat as well. When I was doing my sketches for like the logo and stuff, I got at least I think maybe 10 done. Then I took a break and showed it to my family. And like I was like, hey, so like these are the logos I created, and just if you guys can give me any input on them, be like, this is for a musical artist named Andy Madison. Getting feedback from them like definitely helped out a lot and helped like push me in a good direction of where to go.
Mhm.
Um, Additionally, like another challenge I kind of encountered like with this, my central theme for this project was novelty. And it was a little difficult because I was just sitting there, I'm like, okay, how can I like make this logo seem like it'll be something for people who need novelty? And so
Mhm.
that was like something I had to go through, like just thinking like what would make this look unique compared to something that had been made previously. Like where
Mhm.
can I push this? Like what can I do differently? And I did that, and then just getting feedback from like my family like just helped me a lot, and it was super beneficial.
Do you think it was difficult for you guys to receive the feedback?
Sometimes I feel like it was like, especially when
Mhm.
I liked a
Hmm.
certain design,
Right.
and my sister, like I have like already all these great ideas. Like I feel like we go like one step and like 20 steps further. Like we're like, oh my God, this idea. And
Right.
then now we're
Yeah.
like this packaging and this, like, we create these ideas, and then it's like, no, that was not the best one. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Had all these great
Yeah.
ideas. And now they're just like, like it's funny. And like for example, how you were talking about the creating of like the sketches, like something I felt that I started to do was just kind of do the like while I was getting these ideas in my head, like all these great ideas, I was like, okay, yeah, this I feel like will look great for the brands. I would try to research it before I even sketch it, or like sketch
Mhm.
it and then research it sometimes. And then I'm like, there's nothing that applies to that connect it to the brand. So then
Mhm.
I'll kind of like scratch that, and I'll be like, okay, let me go to something else. Like, and it was very difficult to come up with a lot of like different ideas and then have other people's opinions as well. Like it was very difficult to like get everything together and have one like two final right now that we have. And especially this week, it's like one.
Yeah.
Mhm. I was thankful for getting feedback I mean, I think like this whole program has been shaped around that. We've had to critique other classmates' work, and I think that's just really helped because that's the reality of the career. And it, it won't be, our classmates next time. It will be, it could be a company or whoever you're representing. And I think it kind of helps you to like, I want to say get thicker skin, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, because people don't have the same design understanding. Like that's, why people have designers is because they don't have that background knowledge. So I had the same, realization. Like it is difficult to accept it, especially when you like it. But I also am grateful that we've had this experience in, a safer environment and a more, controlled environment.
Hmm.
Because as we do get further along, it won't necessarily be the same. So, but again, definitely an adjustment.
Yeah, it's like also what you said, also like separating yourself from it and
Mhm.
having other people's opinion helps with that. It helps with kind of giving us like a reality check in a way. Kind of it's like, okay, it's not all about what we like, it's about also what will, come relate to the target audience and connect with the audience itself.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think we're go ahead and move on. Okay, so I know we chose some brands and we are gonna compare them to the case studies in the course. So I chose Doritos. I really enjoyed researching this. They came out with the first logo in 1964. And as you can see, it's like blocked out. There's a letter in each one. And one of the articles I was reading said that the font is just very 60s. And I thought that was very accurate. It is very 60s.
Yeah, it
Um,
has like that vibe. It definitely has it.
yes, it definitely looks like it could be in a magazine, like, now, because that kind of style is coming back. Um, but I just thought it was really interesting because then their next logo, the only change that they made, it was, I believe, in the 70s, they came out with one that's super similar. The colors they'd shifted the colors a little bit. And then opposed to having a block per each letter, they like merged them. So there wasn't a box per letter. Does that make sense? So that was an interesting design choice. It didn't, explain too much as to why, but again, super similar, just a little bit more muted. And then the next one that they did, I think was in the 90s. I want to say 90s. And then that's finally when they decided to represent their product in it. So the problem with this design and the other ones was that if you weren't familiar with the brand, you wouldn't know what it's about. So to combat that, they added a triangle in the tittle, like in the eye. um, and behind the logo, they added like a red outline of a chip. Um,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen that logo.
yeah,
That was a
yep.
very popular one.
And then they used like red and yellow, which are, very common in food colors or in food logos. But I just thought kind of the shift from the non-descriptive logos to the descriptive logos was very similar to what we had been looking at in like the case studies. The one brand or I can't think of the name, the one that starts with an M, in the case studies, the Middle Eastern one. But
I
the
don't recall
like
the
the
name, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it, so I don't want to butcher it, but it's like seeing that process and how everybody kind of represented it different was interesting, but I liked that the focus was then shifted to, is it going to be recognizable? Or are people going to be able to relate to it? And that's how Doritos did with their logo. So just a very interesting design. And then of course on the right is the one that's today. So quite a shift.
Yeah, it's very interesting the shift that the brand completely took. And it's funny how usually like some people kind of talk about the brand. Like I feel like everyone talks about how like sleek the design is for the logo for
Mhm.
Doritos, and everyone I've heard people talk about how like they like the new brand and stuff like that. A lot of people that like Doritos. But I really like the how, for example, they did like how do you say, like the triangle, kind of like the ship, the
Mhm.
chip, and it went like inside the logo. It really gives like a 3D feel, and I really like
Mhm.
the logo. It's a little bit like I feel like they use the colors to obviously like what's the word, like to kind of like bold, I guess, like the shape, and then they
Right.
muted everything else like you said, but they still kind of kept the original logos of the original colors of the brand,
Mhm.
like the orange and the yellow and the red.
Right. And um I'm sure you guys are familiar with like the red and the yellow being used there. It's supposed to portray, or it's supposed to like convey feelings of hunger. So a lot of restaurants will have like yellow inside of their restaurants. And their brand, like the Doritos logo throughout, has had yellow and red in all of them. So I think, or nearly all of them. So that was something else that kind of stood out to me, because even the logo now, as you can see, like it has the, like the flame, and you can see those colors in there.
Yeah, the colors, something that I like when I found out, I think last week or this week, my bad. I found out something, even like lighting invokes like feelings. Like for example, doctor's office, they have really bright lighting and certain colors on the walls so it can make us feel queasy and
Right.
uncomfortable. And then other places like grocery stores, for example, have like warm lighting, which is kind of like what you think about like your house, because usually homes like houses come with like warm lighting and you like the yellow
Right.
lights. And grocery stores, so you can feel comfortable and stay there longer, they use those lighting. So I think it's very interesting, like just anything, it's important to invoke the feeling that you're wanting to
Mm-hmm.
create for the audience to have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point and a good connection. Okay. All right.
Okay, so mine, the brand that I chose was Pepsi. The first logo was in 1898. Before that, it was something called Brad's, I think, or something like that, Brad's Refrigeration or something like that. And then they changed to Pepsi. They had Pepsi Cola. Then they kind of went, so the idea that I had, which I wanted to connect it to the class, was how we were taught in week 3 and the refinement considerations, how to like simplify
Mm-hmm.
the logo. Because in my logo that I was doing for one of the ones for my brand therapy era, I thought it was funny that I had created a more complicated logo, and then I ended up going back to the original one, which was more simple.
Mm-hmm.
So Pepsi has kind of done the same thing, which a lot of brands have done, that they've simplified their logos to connect with kind of how the industry is today in a way. That's why I thought it was very interesting. Like Doritos, I feel like how you said it's still a very like it's a bold logo. And to
Mm-hmm.
me it was interesting because for example, I went with like the how brands have simplified it, and I feel like Dorito kind of like
Yeah,
stands
opposite.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands out in the audience, it stands
Yeah.
out in like different brands. Um, but the same thing with like the colors and everything, like it's meant to invocate, because like for example, like when you think of like the blue, sometimes it's like a color blue that thinks of like water and stuff like that. Because usually when you think of blue, you think of water like in maps, and it's like it's thirsty, and it kind of like it creates it's like a kind of like a domino effect in the sense of like different colors. So that's what I kind of went with the simplification, how every brand is kind of going more simple, and they go into something. I feel like they go back and forth
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like they went simple and then they go more complicated and they go simple. At least with like Pepsi, I feel like.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because it went like to more complicated and to more simple. Like after when they just kind of like did Pepsi, I feel like it just kept changing, and then sometimes we end up going to the original.
Right.
Like I think I heard that there's gonna be a new logo, so I was looking at that. I saw some people kind of have a idea of what they think it could be, or I'm not sure if it already came out because I tried looking and I couldn't find like Pepsi actually coming out with a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it kind of looks like the 1965 one, just more rounded and more put together, like
Oh,
the one
wow.
that's currently now. And it's interesting how like the 1996 is just the icon, and a lot of Pepsi like brands only has like the icon sometimes, or
Mm-hmm.
like we know it by we recognize the brand by that icon, by the red and the red, white, and blue colors.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was really interesting just that it's important to sometimes also not make such a complicated logo, for example.
Right.
That's why I thought it was really interesting also Doritos, like you were talking about, just how different it is from other brands and how it's still simple in a way, but it has its like like it's very dimensional.
Yeah.
Um
Something I was looking at as you're talking, the newest logo is the only one that's lowercase, and all of them are uppercase, which also, as I was researching for my logo, I came across like what uppercase letters mean versus lowercase. And uppercase is supposed to be like a strong, like almost authoritative type of feeling, kind of like very bold. And the newest one is lowercase, and it's like very rounded and just very different than what some of the other designs are. So that just something additional, and it's the only one that has like they changed the logo, like the white stripe in the middle on that one. So that's the
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
yeah, it's very different than what they started out with.
Yeah, like it's very more like it's funny how you think the other one's more like it kind of has a yin yang feel in like the 1986 when you can kind of see like in a way like it has two different parts, but I feel like the the newest one, that the one that's now currently, like you said, they changed the way it looks. It kind of makes me think of, it kind of looks in a way like a sticker in a way, but also kind of think like it's like it has different looks to me. But they definitely changed it. And I think that was weird. The what I didn't notice is like the type, like you said.
Mhm.
Um they do more like a lowercase and more rounded. Supposedly, I think I read somewhere that that's more like it makes you feel more comfortable and more
Mhm.
like something familiar. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. The difference, like to me, when I also thought about the how they simplified the logo is other brands like US Today, which is like a newspaper, and then McDonald's, for example, they have McDonald's had like a very complicated logo years ago. They had like a little man and everything in the
Oh
logo.
yeah. Ronald.
Yeah,
Was it Ronald?
yeah, it was like a little, I don't know, I think it was, I don't know what they called it, but I know it was like a little man that they had in the logo.
Mhm.
And then also like US Today, for example, had a whole like they were trying to use like the whole globe, and now it's just literally a dot. Like it's
Mhm.
literally just a circle and it changes color to the different like part that you're in. So I thought that's just kind of interesting because we get so much into our head about having a really nice logo and applying to the brand and everything, but we don't need such a complicated logo. You know, we
Mhm.
don't need like so many little details because at the end of the day, you're like sometimes you can't see that from far away or it won't reflect on like everywhere, like especially like in a billboard you're not gonna sometimes be able to see it, or like in certain outlets you're just not able to see something so detailed because it's not going to be always like a large logo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was a very interesting one. You chose well.
Yeah, I'm like I went you went for something very dynamic and I was like, oh, okay, and then I was
Yeah.
like mine is simple.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that's like another important concept. Like, a lot of the articles and things that I was reading, and even in our like case studies, like the simplicity was, a huge point, but also differentiating. And, had they have gone from like the 1898 to the now logo, like would people still be able to recognize it? And would they still relate to it? Like, had there not have been this progression beforehand, would people still have reacted the same way to the brand that they do now? It's recognizable, and like I feel the colors stand out to us, but in the beginning it's completely different. So yeah, it's very interesting how it works, and it's definitely something we have to remind ourselves of, like, simple. Just because it's busier doesn't mean it's better. So
Yeah, like how you said, like the for example, before it was just red and then it became
mhm.
they added the blue and it kind of made it stand out. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, so Tropicana here. This design actually caused a lot of issues with the rebrand on
Yes.
the right.
Yep.
So on the left, you have like the original one, you have the orange with the straw in it and just, the perfect packaging. So then they decided to rebrand and just have it, be like it's in like a glass cup for some reason. I don't know why they did this. I mean, just you took basically what really doesn't work with this one. You took away like this classic logo that everyone like recognizes instantly, and you just really has no point to the card and just being there. Like I don't get when they just changed it up. I do gotta
Mhm.
say though, the one thing I really do like about the rebrand, I think it's kind of neat how they made the cap like into an orange. I thought that was like
Yeah.
a really neat little design. Um, but yeah, like after like everyone did not respond well to like this redesign over here, they changed it back to the original. Um, it's basically like a good example of like what not to do when rebranding and
Mhm.
creating a logo. Um, but yeah, like I truly wish they kept like the new cap and put it on the original. Like I think that would have been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like again going back into like in this case it's almost like they way oversimplified it. I mean, there's no differentiation between like their type, like all the font is like sans serif, like there's no contrast between it. I think the colors are bolder, but truly, I mean, I think the most effective design decision, like you said, was making the cap in orange. But other than that, I mean, I think it was more of like a modern take on it, and it just was not received well, and I can I can understand
Yeah.
why. But I think it kind of brings us back to like what we were talking about too with the Pepsi one. Had they have gone from the first logo to the second or the last one, the most recent, would it still be recognizable? And this kind of, reminds us that you have to be careful not to, completely strip away the heart of the brand with what you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like it's very like how you said if it would have been done that initial jump because I know Tropicana by like that first one, the orange with
Mhm.
the little straw in it. So like to me it's important how you said like to do that jump. It's kind of
Mhm.
like for the audience sometimes they won't react well. So it's important like other brands how like Doritos and Pepsi for example, they slowly when changing little minor things or sometimes changing just small intricate things and sometimes it just doesn't connect with the target audience. For me, the first thing that I noticed is kind of like the little cap also that it was an orange. I thought that was a really nice detail, but changing completely like they added a lot of white space and I feel like it was very like from the like middle kind of down, it's just like
Yeah.
white space and barely anything to it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I definitely see like I know they had a new logo, like the new one that they have there, which is kind of the same rounded fonts, kind of like we talked about, that now more brands are using more rounded fonts. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, typeface and stuff like that. They're more rounded.
Mhm.
But they kind of use it around the whole, like I just feel like it's kind of simple. So I definitely agree with um like the audience not being able to agree with it. It just became very like there's nothing to it, just a little cap, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So the rogues, we are to talk about the possible logos that could be connected to our name. So when you guys thought of it, what came to your mind and what decisions would you make based on it?
Hmm. I could kind of see something being kind of mysterious in a way. Like I could
Mhm.
definitely see something very mysterious.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea that I had for me. I feel like it's something like edgy and like a dark color palette for like a logo.
Mhm.
Because I feel like rogues are definitely seen as someone who's like a like maybe seen as a villain or someone who's kind of like an anti-hero.
Mhm.
Or maybe someone who's usually like does what they need to like they do what needs to be done, but not like they have their own rules. So I
Mhm.
definitely feel it's like more like an edgy kind of like a feel to it and have like a darker color palette. I feel like that's what I would think about. That's what initially where I would go with.
I was just looking at the like the archetypes, and I think a good explanation for or a good archetype to represent it is the outlaw. Like the example is Harley Davidson, it's kind of that edgy feel. And I think that that represents it. I was trying to find a definition of rogues that matched what I really thought it was. And to me, it was more like just like an outlier, not necessarily somebody that was, you know, uh, cruel or not innocent is what one of the definitions had said. I really didn't know the depth of what it meant. So I think that the outlier is actually fitting for what it is because, it while it does have kind of a negative connotation, it typically means people still like you or and I think that's like an important thing to capitalize on and to emphasize as you would be designing the logo.
Yeah, I definitely thought of that too when I looked at the definition of it. It's more like a villain. That's why to me I felt like it was someone who was seen as a villain. But I
Right.
don't think it's someone who's actually like a villain. That's why for example, like when I think of it, it's someone like an anti-hero kind of way.
Hmm.
That they're seen like a villain, but they're not truly a villain. It's just someone who doesn't maybe do things the way it's like rules, in the sense of
Hmm.
like I don't know if you guys watch, for example, like the Arrow from like DC Comics or like from CW, the show.
Yes.
He was kind of like an anti-hero, I feel like, in a way, in the sense of like he helped people, but he didn't do it by the rules that people wanted a superhero to do.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of like the way I see it. And I definitely agree with the brand archetype with the outlaw. And like some of it usually say like brand voice can be like destructive, rebellious, combative. But to me, it's something, like I feel like that applies to that someone who not, not doing by their own rules, but they do what needs to get done. So I feel like that's what I would think about initially when looking at the name. And then for the logo, I would think of like ideas that come into mind is just something edgy and dark color, maybe something that also like has something like bold, like how you said that we were talking about like typeface, have
Hmm.
like a bold, like maybe something capital letters it could be,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
yeah, something that like is bold and like stands out.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I had the same idea in mind, like a uppercase, probably something with some sharp shapes in there, almost like lightning bolts or, just that jagged type of appearance, to kind of give it that edgy feel. I also think something probably with like dark colors or warm colors, not necessarily like cool. I think almost like the Doritos type of coloring is good. Because it just gives a more of an edgy feel. Um, but I think, something important to again bring back to is you don't want to, I mean, it could be perceived the wrong way, the name. So I think it's, really important to emphasize the feeling of, still welcoming, but also being kind of an outsider.
Something interesting that I found, for example, like what is a rogue character? It says a rogue is a versatile character, capable of sneaky combat and nimble tricks. So I think that's kind of interesting also, like someone who is very skilled also. This is like from Dungeons and Dragons, but it's still in the end, it kind of like I feel like it kind of applies in the end, like when you think of like a rogue person, that's what I think about. Because it kind of comes into that name that I've seen before. It's like the same thing I've seen it from a video game or sometimes from like a movie or something. So I think it's interesting that that's like the way I've seen that name, like that word, because it says like also the rogue is stealthy, and I think that's just interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's like another form of media when you think of the Rogue. It's like in that Rogue One Star Wars movie, they were like sneaking around the entire movie just trying to
Mhm.
get plans to blow up the Death Star. Could see that as well.
Yeah, that was the first thought I had, and I've never even seen Star Wars, but I have that was my immediate thought. And that's kind of how I knew what the term meant. Um, but based on that, who do you guys think the target audience would be? I struggled with answering that one. I think it's hard, when you don't have a product or a service, but um, to me, it would be like somebody like edgier. A specific demographic though was kind of hard to pinpoint.
Yeah, that's kind of difficult because I think it can apply to a large audience possibly, but maybe
Mhm.
someone who's more like maybe like specifically it can be someone like, how I always talked about for me, like I've seen that word rogues is kind of like in video games, how you said like Star Wars,
Mhm.
or sorry, how we were talking about Star Wars and stuff like that. Um, and I think about also like Marvel and I don't know if I've heard the specific name, but that's what I think about, for example, like certain characters. So I definitely feel maybe someone who kind of watches those like or plays those video games, for example, can be someone
Mhm.
like maybe like because I don't think it'll be like younger teens. I mean, it could be like just teens, maybe to like young adults, stuff like
Mhm.
that maybe. That can be the specific target audience. Something that like I feel they would like more like the edgy and like those type of those type of ideas and like looks to like a brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that like perfectly encompasses it. After you said that, it immediately, like, I could see it. It definitely is something that, you'd have to pinpoint, but to me, it would also, I don't know, I have like a vision of like a male in my head versus, like a female receiving. Like how would you view a logo that included all the elements that we talked about? And to me, the audience would probably be predominantly men. And that's just another aspect of of
Yeah, I
the
think that's
branding
interesting because
process.
there's a brand called Rogues or something like that, and it's like a weightlifting brand,
Mhm.
like like exercise equipment. So I think that's kind of interesting, you picking like a specific gender and stuff like that for
Mhm.
the audience. Because I definitely think that like I feel like most of the population, when you think of like percentage, I don't know if Jonathan would agree, it's kind of like most, like men usually the ones who play video games, like those video games in the sense of like Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
Like there's another game called CS:GO. Like I've played those games, but I know like usually when I play it, they're like, why is there a woman here? And I'm just like,
Right.
I play this game too, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you guys want to add about this one or in general?
No, I think for me I would say I don't feel like anything else. I feel like we kind of have a good we kind of talked about all the concepts. And I feel like we described everything that we learned in the class and kind of we mostly connected a lot. I feel like usually with a design discussion, a lot of us have a lot of like the similar feelings of the class. And I feel like a lot of the similar like impact that we have, like for example, like for me it was like the ideation process, but for you guys, I feel like it was very similar as well, and like you guys have
Yeah.
similar ideas too to me. So I think that's just kind of important to see that, and like I love these design discussions in the sense of like we're able to share how much we connect in the industry and just like all the classes and the assignments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway by far has been, just the act of self-reflecting and having other people interpret and receive the design and then making design modifications based on that. And that's truly been the biggest takeaway for me because, like I said before, it's very easy to create something that you like, but representing a brand is something completely different. And when you have sales and um like income on the line for it, I think that adds kind of another layer of stress and pressure because you want to create something that's going to be successful for a brand, and just having all those things in mind is going to help you to create something that is effective. So yeah, definitely has been a very helpful. All right.
Not
Anything
sure if
else?
Jonathan,
Yeah.
yeah, Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, just like basically, it's this like whole class essay has like really just kind of like it's been nice to like learn all these skills and like just be able to
Mhm.
refine them. Um, like when designing, like, conducting the research, like being like, okay, what can work, what can communicate, what has been done, what can I do differently? And then, doing the initial sketching process and, showing off to people, be like, hey, can you give me some feedback on this? Because that's always fun because essentially like you've been working on for let's say 5 hours and they're like, oh, okay, like they have a fresh set of eyes, and it's always good to take breaks in between and then to come
Mhm.
back and be like, with the feedback you've gathered, and be like, okay, I can do this, and see, let's see what will work. But
Mhm.
yeah, like just um getting feedback and like applying it is like it's a great thing. But what's also really funny about it too is like you can do one logo and one person will like that logo and then another person will not like that logo. So it's always just funny trying like seeing what everyone likes and dislikes with it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, going off of that, I think it's good to get different opinions, but most importantly, you want to get opinions from people that are similar to your target audience. And that was, something I had to think about when I was sending people my the logo for the toy company, because, you know, I sent it to a mix of people, different ages, different, you know, demographics, psychographics, and my, you know, the perspective of my dad is going to be different than that of my coworker that has young kids, you know, and the reasons he likes it may be different than hers. So, that's a very important point, and I definitely agree.
Something that Jonathan mentioned that made me think about as well that I thought was really interesting about this class was just kind of having a whole class to do the logo and then the revisions and the sketches, because usually like in the bachelor's program we had to have like the logo by like 2 weeks, like in 2 weeks. So like the first week and the second week we already had the logo. So I thought that was interesting how it's like a longer process and it's like it's more in depth to making sure that connection is formulated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely it's been very beneficial. All right. Well, I thank you guys so much for being in a group, and I am going to stop the recording now. Okay. Trying to